I want to welcome everyone who's joining us here today. The topic is building a one-page marketing strategy. Marketing is a huge part of moving any business forward. More than having a marketing department or outsourcing your marketing to a third party, it needs to be embedded into every part of your business, from tech to HR to digital. But when not every employee is a marketer, how can this be achieved? So this episode will lean into how to do this. So as usual, our regulars know we get started with some ideas from Randall, and then we kick into questions from you and from me, and it's lots of fun. So, first, I'll introduce Randall here for those who don't know. He has founded several successful startups. He's held a long-time position at a Big Four consulting firm. He was a senior executive at an American public company. He's the author of 8 books in the Speaker Hall of Fame, master facilitator, and he's worked with over 100 organizations. And now he works with me at the Brain Trust Professional Institute, helping organizations grow their businesses through coaching, leadership retreats, and speaking engagements. So, Randall's going to kick us off and get us thinking. Randall, what are the most important things we need to know about the one-page marketing strategy?
So, most people who are actually experienced saying, well, how can you boil it down to one page? And, it's always a question of headlines and everything. I want to take a step back and because I know that there's people at different levels who are here today and who may be listening to it, why marketing? It's really, really simple. It's to identify potential buyers, and then it's to, if you will, make it easy to then close the sale. And when I say potential buyers, if you think about it, it's actually a lot wider than you actually think. Potential job candidates, for example, potential clients, potential members, potential sponsors, potential partners, potential investors, right? So the marketing function, if you will, can be used and is used in all these. And what I'm going to try to do today is actually uh, allow my responses to work in any of these. So whether you're raising money looking for investment, or whether you're looking to hire the right people, or improve your sales and marketing on any of the other dimensions, that's kind of where I want to do. So I'll also say that close the sale, but after that, there's a whole question of, well, what other roles does marketing have, like increasing retention, or generating referrals, loyalty, all of that as well. So, between identifying potential buyers and closing the sale, there's a number of questions that I think are actually very useful for us to keep in mind. Probably one of them, and this seems academic, but it's not actually. The question is, who are they? Who are those prospects that you're dealing with? And there's two terms that you may have heard or you may not have, but they're actually quite useful. One is what's called an ideal customer profile, ideal client profile, ideal member profile. The idea is that the type that you work best with, that you're trying to attract the most more than anything else. Can you describe who that ideal is? Because if we understand where the bullseye, where that target is, it becomes a lot easier to say, well, we're not going to aim all these other places. We're going to aim right over here. And if we get to know what drives them, what's on their mind, what motivates them, etc., it becomes a little bit easier. So the ideal customer profile, the ICP, there's a few other names for it as well. That's concept number one. Concept number two is something called personas. Sometimes you hear the word avatar. I like persona. So um, the idea here is that it may not just be one ideal customer profile, but there might be a bunch of different ones, right? And when we're talking about marketing, we need to sometimes market beyond just that one, but recognize that there might be others involved in it. So if you're doing a large sale, for example, that involves a lot of different stakeholders, each one might have a different persona. If you're dealing with, for example, different generations, let's say you're running a membership organization, younger types might be one persona, older types, existing versus new. Like there's different ways of doing it. Men versus women. This geography versus that geography. Regulators versus partners versus customers. So once we sort of have a sense as to what drives each of those different personas, we can say, okay, how do we apply our marketing to move each of them along? Right? So that's the first concept. Who are they? The personas, if you will, the ideal customer profile. The second concept is the question of where. The first is who, the second is where. Where do they spend their time? So this is a simple thing. At the most simplistic basis, Advertising is a marketing tactic. Okay. Um, you know the expression fish where the fish are, you don't want to put your advertising fishing line in a pond where there's no fish, right? So if you know, for example, there's a lot of your prospects, a lot of these ideal customer profile people, or organizations who are in a particular area, they attend a particular trade show, for example, they're in a particular discussion forum, discussion group. They graduate from a certain college or university, they whatever it happens to be, they're members of a particular association or affinity group or profession or whatever. If you know where they are, you don't have to spend money inefficiently or time for that matter, targeting them. The third question that sometimes people don't ask at the very beginning before they put together this one-page marketing plan is when? What's the urgency of them actually transacting? What are another way, why now? If we understand, for example, what the um, impetus is for them to do a transaction. And now, by say do a transaction, it may be agree to actually join your organization. If you're recruiting, it could be agreeing to write a check if they're an investor. It could be to join your professional association. It could be to um, uh, consider purchasing your product. Well, why now? And if we understand that urgency, we can start to craft a better message, right? A more focused message. And we could also realize for those who are a bit further along and it's a kind of not yet kind of thing, it becomes a little bit easier for us to say, okay, let's not spend so much time beyond the marketing to sort of close them because they're not going to close, right? It's such an awful word to close, if you will. I'll get to that later on. So those are my sort of overall sort of opening comments, but I wanted to also speak to something that I'm sure we'll have a chance to explore in far greater detail, and this is what we called the trust curve. And if anybody's taken any, MBA business school courses, they're very big on frameworks because if we sort of know the framework, we can sort of fill in the blank. And when we fill in the blank, we have a much better idea how to be successful. Probably the most famous marketing framework is something called the 4P framework. The way it goes is if you fill in the blanks for price, product, place, and promotion, like advertising, you will then have your one-page marketing plan. You'll know exactly what to do. But that's not true. That's not true. That might have been true in the 1960s and 70s and way, 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 way back before, most of our time. But today it's a little bit more sophisticated. Of these 4Ps, where's the prospect? That's a missing one, right? And how about the concept of trust? Okay, where does that come from? Where did that go? It's missing from some of these older frameworks. And isn't it true? And think about your own experience when you're going through a personal, purchase process. If you don't trust that whatever you're going to purchase or whatever you're going to join or whatever you're going to do will actually solve the problem, you're not going to transact, no matter how clever the salesperson is or how pressure they are, or however great price there is, or what a great advertisement, unless you actually have got that trust that indeed it'll solve your problem, then I don't think you're going to ever transact. Famously, when Ronnie and I are working with our coaching clients or at retreats, I'll repeat this. People don't care about me or Ronnie for that matter. They care about how we can solve their problems. So if we're not able to, work in their space, it makes it very, very difficult. In other words, unless we're able to build trust and demonstrate the expertise or that we can solve the problem, there won't be a transaction, irrespective of price, product, place, and promo from the old MBA kind of a framework. So I'm going to introduce a different framework, and this will be the bones that this one-page marketing plan will sit on, and we'll spend some time exploring it and obviously taking your questions. So the model is called the trust curve. And the way the trust curve works is this. At the very beginning, you have no idea. You might not even know you've got a problem. And at the very end, over time, trust increases to the point where you're willing to make a commitment. Whether you think about how you might have met your significant other, right? Or when you bought, when you're going to buy or bought your last car, it kind of works the very same. The trust curve is really divided in four segments, four stages: awareness, preference, trial, and commitment. So if we think about those four stages, awareness is, gee, I've got a problem and I know about the product. Um, dare I ask for a volunteer? Is anybody willing to volunteer? I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about how you bought your last car. Would that be okay? Anybody want to play? You can put up your hand. You can say, you could go like this with your face. No. Okay, so we got Jason Irvine. Thank you very much. Come off mute. Thank you very much. Jason, where are you based very quickly?
I'm in Ottawa, in the Queen.
Ottawa.
Yeah,
Wonderful. So listen, Brain Trust Professional Institute is based in Ottawa and Toronto. So how about that? Um, so
perfect.
anyway, so Jason, I gotta ask, okay, what car are you driving now?
A Hyundai Elantra.
Hyundai Elantra. Okay, so listen, even though I'm asking Jason these questions for everybody else, can you just think about your last car purchase? Okay, think about, Jason, what happened to the last car? Why did you decide you needed a new one?
Because the engine died, and it cost more to fix the engine than the car was worth. So,
Okay. Okay, so I'm guessing we've got quite a few people listening and live here actually. I bet for some of you it's like, well, I've got kids, I need a minivan. Gee, I don't have kids, I want that sports car now. Gee, the lease is up, right? Whatever the particular reason, all of a sudden, you're aware that you now need a new car. Jason probably a little bit more urgently than everybody else. But and by the way, um why didn't you just get a Toyota or a GM or something? What about why Hyundai?
finances was a big thing. I was kind of just in a general sense aware of some of the I guess, cheaper models of cars kind of off the lot. I didn't really have a cash and savings that I could, put forward into any repairs if I was getting a used vehicle. So I was worried about that. So I wanted to get something newer that I could just have a monthly payment to that I could afford versus an unexpected repair expense. Um, and
So
Toyotas I
so
know are reliable, but they're way more expensive. So,
so it was driven by price and everything, but let's just take a step back here. Okay, for everybody here, Jason was aware that he needed a new car, and he was aware that Hyundai existed, and actually they've got reasonable price cars. Probably was aware of where the dealership was too, or he could quickly look it up. But that's that first stage awareness. Okay, and then when it comes to saying, okay, the second stage preference, you prefer Hyundai and the Ioniq because it's available and it's cheap. Okay, but I'm guessing that you're probably influenced by what they might have looked like on the street. They looked okay, right? You're probably and I'm speaking to everybody here. You're probably influenced by what was on social media. You're probably influenced by what a friend or a neighbor said, or maybe there's a whole you saw something somewhere about it and you say, oh, maybe I should check it out. Okay. So at a certain point, we all make a decision that we prefer something. But we're all doubting Thomases. We haven't earned that. We haven't fully earned trust. So what do? We do a test drive, trial. Okay, Jason, I'm sure that when you went into the Hyundai dealership, you took your, I don't know, wheelbarrow full of cash and you said, oh, that's the one I want just right over there. And you gave them the cash, they gave you the keys, and off you went, right? Uh,
it wasn't
no.
quite that simple, but yeah,
Right? But
more
how?
or less.
Listen. Before you buy the car, you do a test drive. Before you sort of commit to somebody, on a personal basis, what do? You go on a few dates, right? That's the test drive, right? And so here's the question. Okay. Um, after the test drive, what happens? You say, I think this is right for me. I'm going to buy it, right? And that's commitment. But the whole marketing plan, the whole thing is boiled down to this. As an organization, what are the specific activities that you can do to build awareness? What are some of the specific activities that improve preference? What are the specific activities that drive trial and make commitment easy? If you're able to say, okay, for a particular persona, here's the specific awareness, preference, trial, commitment activities that will move people up that trust curve. My God, you've got the plan. Of course, it's not just that simple, which is why we're here for an hour or so talking about it. But it's very, very, very simple to sort of use that framework and say, as long as we're moving people up the trust curve and we've got the right initiatives along the way, we're good to go. Jason, thank you very much. We'll give you the virtual hand. Okay, you can go off mute and everything. Um,
We have a
Ronnie,
comment here from Ren. Ren said, reawareness. Assume this is all about how does one hear about, see for the first time, word of mouth. Social media is a big part of the decision-making process.
oh yeah, that's a great insight. And let me just expand on that a little bit. Let's just say you've got a blog. Okay, you've got a blog talking about your product, service, organization. Okay, and you're putting something out, and somebody is thinking about, well, gee, maybe I should join, maybe I should consider purchasing, maybe I should do something. Okay. If they don't know about you, they're going to do a Google search. They might check on social media and they say, I didn't know that organization, that product, that service actually was existed. Okay. But then let's say they start reading a bunch of the blog posts or looking at a whole bunch of the social commentary on the different social networks. At that point, what happens? They say, this is actually something, there's a good fit here. This is something that I'm actually quite interested in, which is preference, right? Sometimes people will say something like, well, maybe we could use social to sell. Okay, but social is very good for awareness and preference and not so good unless you're in a B2C kind of thing where you're trying to drive high volume kind of purchases. Most B2B, most organizational, most professional associations, most everything else, it's a question of saying, okay, how can we solve the awareness and preference? Just in the same way, by the way, Ren, that using a CRM, that is useless for awareness, but that helps track the trial and commitment. Like there's different tools for different parts of the trust curve. So great question. Anyway, that's my opening sort of overview, and hopefully people have questions, and I suspect Rania's got some as well. I haven't seen or heard any of Rania's questions, so we're gonna we'll see what comes up. But let's see what everyone has to say.
Randall, when I hear your opening marks here talking about the trust curve, about the ideal customer, identifying buyers, closing the sale, that applies to any marketing plan. But if we're talking about the one pager, like is there like a different thought process or use case for the one page marketing plan?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think that you have to have all these things in your mind when you're doing that one page. And to be very clear, a one-page marketing plan can be as simple as the trust curve, and this is kind of live without slides and everything. So let me very, very quickly um, draw something on my tablet. And if you imagine this, this is awareness, preference, trial, commitment. There's time along the bottom, right? And if you imagine, for example, just a list of specific initiatives underneath awareness, preference, trial, commitment, it does not need to be more sophisticated than that. The question, of course, is, well, what should go under them? And what I'll say is it depends on what you're selling. Are you selling more members in your association? Are you selling professional services? Are you selling, for example, trying to hire the most people or build up a partner program or so on, right? It really depends on what they are and everything. So
Dennis, we have a question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, Randall. So, so a one-page marketing plan is a very visual tool, then, I'm assuming. Um, what would be the difference between what you're presenting right now and, say, just an infographic?
we've done in the past, infographics galore that show, the whole thing that way, and yeah, it's explanatory and all that. But what I like about the simplicity of that, the trust curve with the things underneath them, is that if you as a leader or a marketing person or service, whatever your particular role, if you have that up on your whiteboard and somebody comes into your office and says, "Hey, I've got a great marketing idea." Okay. Listen, there's only so much time and so many resources. So it's very easy to say, well, let's look to see what's here. And if we're going to add a new initiative on, what are we going to take off? Gee, where does that fit in when somebody walks into your office? For you as a leader to be able to say, "Oh, that's a very interesting idea. Tell me more about it." Um, is it designed to build awareness or, preference or induce trial? Where is that on the trust curve, right? And to be able to say, okay, this is what it is. In a certain sense, yes, it is an infographic as is. Obviously, I just did something by hand, but it's meant to be a dynamic thing because most organizations are dynamic. People come up with new ideas, you pivot, you learn different things. The most powerful, trust curve I have is one that's on a whiteboard. So whenever anybody walks into your office or has a conversation, or frankly, every time you do it, it's a great way to make sure that you're focused on what you're doing. Now, any of the particular initiatives, etc., there may be some more detail behind some of those things. Okay, there may be pages on a particular thing. Gee, how are we going to build up a partnership program? Well, there's got to be more details behind it, but in terms of what the overall strategy is, okay, having it in one place and recognizing that there is some dynamism to it, that's it. Denise, is that helpful?
It is, yes, it is. I guess it forces us to think about a particular service offering and illustrate it visually so that it appeals to people's imagination also, because it would be much more interesting than just reading a couple of paragraphs of text. There's nothing exciting about that, which maybe, I guess, helps root that the understanding of the offering deeper into that person's mind.
Yes, yes. But let me be a bit more tactical for everyone's benefit here. Okay. In a certain sense, the trust curve isn't designed to be aspirational and motivational, if you will. It's meant to be very practical, right? So under awareness, for example, maybe you've got, well, trade shows and some advertising and maybe doing a survey, right? To reach out. Those are very tactical kinds of things. Maybe for preference, you've got maybe some, case studies or referral testimonials or a podcast or something, a blog. So these are very tactical kinds of things that presumably you are either executing or you're looking to execute. Trial, it might be, account planning or the CRM or doing a trial engagement or, a secondment or whatever it happens to be. And a commitment, so if you get an idea that under each of these things, there's some very practical, tactical things that translate this high level strategy that literally land that marketing strategy airplane with some specific tactics that have a goal to move people up to that next bit. So, I guess when I look at this kind of thing, I'm motivated because it's like, oh, it's all here, yes, but it's not meant to. I don't know. It's not really meant to inspire, okay, action, except for knowing that if everybody knows that their particular job in an organization or whether you outsource, etc., that what they're doing matters. It fits into a bigger picture. There's some thought to it, right? You don't need an MBA or 100 years of marketing strategy experience to be able to take a framework like the trust curve and say, okay, we're doing some things already right now Okay, and this is a great exercise, by the way. So you say, well, maybe we can put some of the stuff that we're doing right now on the trust curve. Okay, under awareness, under preference, under trial, under commitment. And honestly, when we take a look at an organization and say, oh, there seems to be a gap somewhere, can you imagine what would happen if you have, and maybe this is the case for you to, as you think about what you're doing in the organization, what happens when you've got lots and lots of stuff at awareness, nothing in preference trial, and lots on commitment? Okay. Well, guess what? You have lots of stuff coming in the top, then all of a sudden nobody kind of moves along, right? And then all of a sudden everyone who gets near the end, everyone gets through. Or what happens, for example, if you have almost nothing in awareness and yet preference trial commitment is really, really good. Well, you have very few people walking in the door, but everybody who walks through the door, they sign the check, they join, they commit in one way or the other, right? What happens if you've got lots of great awareness preference trial, but no commitment? You make it hard for them to actually sign. Well, guess what? That's also a problem. So oftentimes, if you think about what challenges that you're faced in your organization from the awareness through to commitment, you could relatively easily diagnose where, for example, you might need to do some work, right? I'll also say just one other thing before we go on. So on this call and listening to our podcast, the recording of this, there's some people who are marketing leaders of multinationals. There's some entrepreneurs that are, solopreneurs by themselves. There's some small businesses. There's professional associations, super large, super small. Like there's a lot of people here. And I think that once you've got a management team, the question isn't just, okay, we've got that trust curve and the specific things done, but it's also a question of alignment. How do you build alignment so everybody's on the same page? Or sometimes, how do you use, say, a retreat to actually co-create what that trust curve actually looks like, right? So just because we've got, okay, this is the initiatives, getting everybody on the same page so that all the speedboats are going in the same direction is just as important, okay, than whatever the campaign of the day or the initiative of the day actually is.
Okay, thank you for your question. I'll read here. Amy asked a question. Are there best practices you can share on relative spend and focus for each of the four segments and how that's meant to evolve over time?
Oh, Amy, that's such a good question, and it's one that I wish I could answer generically, but whether you're a large organization or a small organization, the answer will be a bit different. Depending on what your overall strategic goals are, okay, and the resources that you generally have, the answer will be different. What's your history? For example, like there's so much. What I would say is this. It should be something dynamic until you could figure it out for yourself. So number one is what's going on right now. This might sound like a really silly analogy, but when I was a teenager, I was really big into stereo systems. I don't know, maybe it was a thing for teenage boys. And I went into the stereo shop and said, I want to buy a new receiver, an amplifier, whatever. And the salesperson, bless his heart, he says, well, what kind of speakers do you have? And I said, well, I've got, and I'll paraphrase here, I've got crapola cheap speakers that only a teenage boy could buy, right? Which means that no matter how good the amplifier is, okay, the receiver is, if you got bad speakers. So he says, you know what? Don't spend your money on a receiver. When you could afford better speakers, get that because that'll make a difference. And I think it's the same kind of analogy if we think about how we choose the relative spend between awareness, preference, trial, commitment, right? Where's the weak link right now in your organization? That's where I would spend. And by the way, it could very well be that you're doing so well in one particular area that you could turn down the tap a little bit and reallocate to somewhere else. Sometimes we're captive of the legacy of the way we've done things before, and we know we don't know what we don't know. And so, what if you cut the expenditure in this part of the marketing, um, this part of the trust curve? If you cut it by 30%, will that be only 1% less effective, or will it be like 70% less effective, right? So you only know by trying. What if we stop doing something and then reallocated that time and money somewhere else? And if it doesn't make that much of a difference, that was a good call. If you could see this making a big difference, rewind and put that back, right? But where's the weak link? Start at the weak link. Does that help, Amy?
Moving on to Manuela's questions. Are there persuasion techniques to influence preference and move towards trial?
Persuasion techniques. Okay. Manuela, can you just come off mic for just a second, and just describe, your organization, just so I could, is it
Yeah,
a small, is it?
absolutely. Yeah, it's a small company right now. I'm developing a new, fairly innovative product for my industry, and that's health foods supplementation.
Okay.
And it's pretty hard to pierce through when you don't have a means of influencing that preference. It doesn't exist yet. So how do you
Okay.
create preference?
Okay. That's fine. Okay. So, to influence, yeah. So there's, if you think, for example, of, um, oh, this is actually a complex question. So picture this. On one hand, people make their decisions. Buyers make their decisions. They're not buyers yet, right? They're kind of in this mode of discovery, right? They're in the mode of understanding. They make the decisions like logically and analytically, etc. Well, if I bought this product, I will have these specific benefits. I will get an ROI on this. Okay, now I just that. It can almost be a post facto justification. Okay. People also make decisions emotionally, impulsively, saying, yeah, I really like this. Okay. I think it'll make a big difference to me. Gee, and so you start to say, okay, so how do you sort of work on those two at the same time? So, some of the ways, is to rely on testimonials by people who are real, who are well known. Sometimes people say, well, maybe we should do influencer marketing. Maybe that might be a way of doing it. You could buy relatively inexpensively from nano influencers, if you will. Sometimes you could say, well, what if we used our blog to sort of, push people through there? More specifically, what if you tried building assessments? In the B2B space, for example, that's a way that many people do, move people into trial. So if you had a self-assessment that somebody could do, where it asks them a whole bunch of questions, and based on how they score, it would be a fit, it wouldn't be a fit, or this aspect of it would be, more important and less important, which means that a conversation afterwards can focus on what's important to them rather than, a generic kind of thing. So, I think that, all of those things can help, right? I also think that there's a certain volume that kind of makes sense, that once you get a certain amount of content in inbound marketing, people start to look for the third-party endorsements. I talked about influencer marketing in a certain sense. If you wanna see an interesting example of this in action, I can't do this from my computer, but go to Google right now, and you could do this on, while we're actually on this Q&A. Go to Google, and I'd like you to search for something. Okay, take a moment, just do it right now. Play along with me, and you'll get a sense of when you do some of this for a long time, what it means. Search for choosing a business growth speaker. Choosing a business growth speaker. Okay, if you do that, and I could see people typing as we're going along, um, there'll be a bunch of sponsored posts, etc. But pretty much at the very beginning, okay, you'll find Randall Craig, right? And it's a pretty cool thing, right? It almost sounds like a bit of a parlor trick, but the reason why that comes up is because of all the preference of activities that we put out, and people linking in, or all those other things. So when people are doing their due diligence, should I sort of jump from preference to trial? They'll do things like a Google search. They won't search for Brain Trust Professional Institute or Rania Francoeur or Randall Craig. Of course, we're going to come up if you search for our names. But if you search for the problem that you're looking to solve, so in this particular case, choosing a business growth speaker, this is this is this is good. And I see that Denis Boudreau says, so you're saying this is more than just good SEO? Well, we haven't spent one nickel on SEO or in SEO services or big chunks of our time doing that either. And
Zero money on advertising.
and
Zero.
zero money on advertising, right? So yeah, I guess it's search engine results, but we're not search engine optimizing. It's just that because there's so much of the preference stuff that's there, okay, Google has made the decision that perhaps we know something about helping a business, an association, an entrepreneurial group, a large organization actually grow and scale.
We'll bounce back to Denny. You want to come on, Mike?
Well, I wrote in chat what I meant to say. I don't mean to butter you up, Randall, there, but the second result was Speakers Bureau of Canada, where they advertise a bunch of growth speakers, the best growth speakers in the country, and you are above that in terms of rank. So it does say something. So to your point, that was it.
And what I'll also say is just, by the way, they represent me too, by the way, that particular bureau, but it's not something, I don't want to get into whether it's a good thing or not thing to pay people for SEO or not to pay people for SEO. But what I'm saying is that if you're doing some of these trust curve activities, Google kind of picks up on it a little bit, right? And it kind of helps. Thank you, Denny.
There were some questions in the chat about the trust curve. I put in the chat links to information on the trust curve on the randallcraig.com website, as well as a recording with more visuals and detail and examples on our website, Brain Trust website. You can catch it there. But just Amy's question here, can you expand on what activities fall under commitment? This
Sure.
want to be pre or post sale and ad spend or both? Do you include referral programs, loyalty programs, or customer discounts under this bucket? With that, we'll break here this part one of building a one-page marketing strategy. We will pick up with more Q&A in part two. And if anything we've talked about so far resonates with you, if you're curious about bringing the topics we talked about so far to your organization or to your next retreat or to better align your team, do reach out. We'd be happy to have a conversation and share resources. You can email us at info@randallcraig.com or book a call at www.randallcraig.net/30 and see you back for part two.